On nights like this, the sea holds its breath, and something beneath remembers. Our lives are braided with the tides, each thread a promise to the roots that hold us. Through the roots, she felt a whisper, an ancient warning carried by the sea.
Not all who come from beyond the tide bring harmony.
Her eyes weighed the strangers, as the sea weighed every choice.
From the fire beneath, the sea delivered a child of ash.
From the sea she brought him, but the village saw only danger.
The elder saw not a child, but a spark that could ignite ruin. One voice rose against the tide of fear.
Elder, that boy deserves compassion.
From the firelands, a war-chanting rider watched the sea. At the edge of water and flame, words were unspoken, yet power shifted in silence.
In that moment of silence, the sea bound her fate to the child of fire. From the ashes, breath returned, yet his presence burned with questions. She kept her vigil, torn between the fire in him and the tide within herself.
Yet not all hearts swayed. Distrust stood watch in silence. The voices of the reef gathered, each heart caught between fear and duty.
Among them rose defiance, the young who saw fire only as a threat.
She gave no words, yet her silence carried heavier than shouts.
From the fire's heart they entered, shadows of stone and flame beneath the roots of water. Two peoples stood as mirrors, kin in form, yet divided by the elements that shaped them.
And with him came silence, heavier than flame, a presence.
The elder stood as the reef itself, weathered, scarred, yet unyielding. Fire does not bow, it consumes. And in his gaze lay the promise of flame.
She stood at the fracture, between tide and flame.
The young of the reef rose, their fear made loud through defiance. And fire answered fire, unyielding, its anger burned brighter than reason. The circle of voices broke, and the tide gave way to the storm.
The circle of counsel shattered, their weapons spoke where words had failed.
The elder's voice rose not in sound, but in light. The reef itself answered his will.
From silence she rose, one voice carried by neither reef nor flame, but by choice.
His gaze fell upon her, like a forge fire on driftwood, daring it not to burn. But within her eyes burned the tide's strength, unmoved, unbroken. In that breathless span, the reef and the flame paused, waiting to see which would break first.
With fire in his stance, he cast his demand: surrender or burn.
But the reef did not bow. The elder's silence spoke louder than flame. Between reef and flame she stood, neither side yielding, yet both shaping her fate. In flame and fury, he cast his demand. The reef must yield or face the storm. The reef's voices cracked,
Some drowned in fear, others clung to hope. Alone, she carried the weight of 2 worlds, her silence heavier than all their shouts.
He cast the old right into the air, a trial not of words, but of strength and will.
The reef trembled, not in body, but in doubt. And from the reef rose a voice without sound. Her stance spoke for all tides. The circle was drawn, not of rope or stone, but of silence and eyes that bore witness.
The elder's word became law. Strength would decide what counsel could not. And fire answered, claiming the circle with sparks and fury.
Into the circle she walked, not with weapon, but with will.
Ocean and fire stood as one, 2 worlds mirrored in defiance.
And in that silence, the reef and the fire held their breath, awaiting the first strike of fate.
And with the first blow, the right awoke, the tide and the flame testing their bounds.
The flame struck heavy, shaking earth and air alike.
But the tide does not break. It bends, flows, and returns with grace. The fire surged, unrelenting. Each strikes a wave of molten wrath.
The tide answered fire, not with fury, but with flow.
For a moment, tide and flame became one, locked, equal, eternal.
The flame raged unchecked, consuming all in its path.
She saw what fury could not hide. Strength without balance is weakness. And the tide rose, not to crush, but to turn the fire upon itself.
The tide rose, and flame bent beneath its flow. Even fire must bow when its blaze has spent itself.
In the circle's silence, fate was sealed. The reef had spoken through her.
In her stance, the reef had spoken, yet the fire did not die. 2 peoples stand divided.